Welcome, and thank you for being here today. I have Jonathan Jones, the Chief Strategic Officer of WTF Comic Books with me today, which stands for World Transmission Frequency. He has been focusing on the occult, on Voudic and magic practices his whole life, but his focus has been to strip away any of the dogma of it and distill the practices into practical application as a practitioner.
I've been focused in the spiritual realm because I don't think that there's real separation between our higher selves and what have been claimed to be our lower selves or our physical selves. And that the practice of the integration of those things really comes across when we start messing around with things like the subconscious, things like meditation, things like breathing exercises, focusing our ability to change our brain waves and realizing on a larger level that everything is connected and that we are not separate from the universe in itself, and that even our very imagination is an activity of the universe and probably one of the greatest activities for utilizing the energies of the universe to manifest and create, since we are made of the same things that make stars.
When I
Absolutely.
first met you, we were talking about chaos magic. We had a conversation about this, and I was so intrigued. There is something about the magic, the mysticism, and the
Mm,
unexplainable that we love as well,
Absolutely.
but bringing it into a practical. So tell me about chaos magic, and then also the voodoo. I think that's something that scares people. It's viewed in the dark. It's viewed as
Sure.
something that,
Yeah.
ooh, stay away from. So let's
Right.
explore this,
Yeah.
please.
So I would like to start with the voodoo.
Okay.
So voodoo and Yoruba, pretty much any African tradition, especially for America, when African slaves sang in their own songs or practiced their own religions or gathered in private or read books, that was demonized because they
Mm,
needed people who would just do what they said, not anybody who had their own focus or energy.
yes.
And so if they were going off their own religion and their own gods, they'd be put in a
Mm,
direction of what their gods had taught them about how it is that they're supposed to be represented as kings and queens in this world. And that would
mm,
not fit the consciousness that was being implanted on them as slaves. So voodoo, through even after slavery ended, was demonized because it was a powerful initiate in the culture to be able to bring back the empowerment to the class that still needed to be lower at that time. And so
oh,
horror movies, horror films, again, big investors used it as the scary thing in the background of the African community that was related. They wanted to say it was related to the devil, even though if you go through the Udo Ifa, which is the holy book of Yoruba, which gave birth to voodoo, um, all of the beings in the book are very human, very motivated by how it is to be in balance with the community. There are some tricksters and there's some different characters, but there is no essential good or evil. They're all motived based on what human consciousness would be motived on, and that's why they relate so closely to humans.
mm,
With voodoo, those ideas were scaled to take away from the actual aspects of if there is a lion that is attacking your community, you're allowed to make sure that lion doesn't attack your community anymore. Also, within that community, you want to do good works in the community. So you have the good and the bad side of anything, but the justice is on the human to express it in
mm,
relationship to the spirit that they're in relation to. And so that is a scary aspect for operating systems that need people to be in certain places, that they're going to harm them if they don't, because voodoo allows for you to say, you're a lion that's trying to attack my community, and you no longer get to do that. And that's a scary thing. So, like the Haitian
mm,
Revolution, it was very voodoo centric when they threw out the French. And that was based on them saying, we deserve our own freedom and nobody gets to rule us anymore. And so they took on
yeah.
a first world nation based off of the religious aspects that were there. Now,
Mm,
with chaos magic, I'll shift the scope. And
okay.
with chaos magic, I was introduced to chaos magic through a book called Apophenia, which was written by Peter Carroll. He also wrote Psychonaut, and he's written This Is Chaos Magic, and he's written. He has a long legacy of books. He's pretty much the prominent person in the field around chaos magic. And its approach again is that everything is true and nothing is true. So in chaos magic, it's kind of that basis of centering the aspects of your practice on who you are and what you're here to discover for you. And that
Mm.
in chaos magic, that the idea of chaos in itself is not what people have classically thought of chaos, that it's just a bunch of, craziness.
Yeah.
That chaos is more on the chaos theory level of a primordial ooze, that out of chaos, out of the initiation of chaos, that there is all of the order that we see in the world and all of the disorder that comes out of the world. But chaos is the fusion point, the ignition point of both of those things. And
Hmm.
so in chaos, it is described that you don't have to pray to a specific God. If you, for whatever reason, found that the Incredible Hulk was a more entertaining God for you, and that you put your belief system, you create an entire belief system around the Incredible Hulk, that when you prayed to the Incredible Hulk and you said, Incredible Hulk, come save me now, that your magic would have more power for you than you paying any attention to anything else that's out there, because you
Mm.
exclusively have the affiliation for it and how it is that it rises, and that you can take that and manifest it into anything that has to do with the individual. And that's what they not prescribe, but what they offer to you to experiment with. That's different than other spiritual practice. A lot of other spiritual or magical practices have very exact practices and rituals that you have to do every time, and that you
Yeah.
need to fit into the scale of what somebody else has gone forth and done before based off of their studies and activity and the signs in the sky. And so chaos magic will have you do experiments that are paradox to a lot of those things, that you don't have a set time to do the practice. You don't have to do anything under the full moon. In fact, it's encouraged that you do it randomly. You want to play with things more than you're serious about them. And so
Yeah.
Apophenion is much more a psychology book about how you play with these aspects of what you've normally done. And if you want to see different things than what you've normally done, you can't continue to do what you normally do or even approach it from the normal way that you would normally look at it. And instead, how can we break you from what you normally are so that you can have a totally different experience? It's all psychology, it's all meditation practices to shift your perspective, to give you a new outlook on things and have new practice that comes from you. And then you from that new chaotic format that your shifting body is not its normal space, you get to see new orders and new disorders that come and rise out of your magical practice.
I like that. New orders and disorders.
Yeah, yeah. Orders and disorders. Absolutely.
Well, because out of the disorder is actually where more order comes from. Sometimes you need things to break down, and in that chaos or it not being exactly how we want it to be, that's the force and the energy propulsion that is actually needed to create something in a new direction.
In
Correct?
my mind, that's usually the real magic, right?
Yeah.
It's not the orderly and it happens just as I see it or imagine it. It because even in those practices where you have very script things or you're doing a subconscious practice before dream time, it's always offered, okay, after you've assumed the energy, let it go and let the universe fulfill how it is. So you're still
Yeah.
tapping into this unknown mysticism, mystic thing of, oh, there's going to be some kind of magic that comes in and I don't need to worry about it anymore. And so with chaos, it's just a very form script of, I'm going to do exact things to make chaos happen. And I'm going to walk around in this new disheveled energy. And then, oh, wow, that was interesting. And I've found it to be, if not as impactful, more impactful sometimes to shake it up like that and do a little bit of chaos magic to have a whole bunch of things shift real quick. And then people will be like, well, how did you end up here? Man, if I told you, you wouldn't believe me?
I just want to ask you, what is the last time you did this? Like, how did this actually look in your life? But
About
maybe
3
that,
months yeah, about
yeah,
3 months
you
before
can?
I met Steven. So, I was,
Really?
like, deep into a practice, and then I got approached by a big money group that said, "We need you to find a guy who has a fund, and it's the ability to trade crypto and do money trades and is really well known and really well off and really focused," and I was like, "Okay." I had already done the
Yeah.
practice, but then these things came together. And then it was about 2 weeks after getting the question from them that I found Steven. And then Steven, in our first conversation, we started getting to talk about magic. It's a business call. and I'm on the call with 6 other people, and I start getting into a talk with Steven about Saint Germain. And, everybody's like, what the fuck are these guys talking about? And we're like hitting it off. And he's like, you know what? You're like a real brother to me, real spirit brother to me. I'm like, yeah, man, I love to carry on our spiritual conversation later, but yeah, let's do some business stuff too. So we set the two apart, and I called him later, and I was like, I really enjoyed our talk about wizardry and like, magic and higher realms and stuff like that. And I'd love to grab a deeper call on that with you whenever you're available. And he was like, actually, we got a meditation group that's forming, and there's 3 of us right now. And yeah, if you're ever interested, I was like, I'll be totally what I'm looking for. And so again,
Cool.
all the things happened. There was a bunch of shifts. I'm looking for a nondescript thing, like you say, walking into a billionaire on a plane, like we've been
Yeah.
talking about. It's kind of that thing of like walking into this next door of total abundance and what the next chapter of life looks like, and how can I have these huge impacts on the planet and become one of these people who are able to go out and just set up these communities and nation build and all these things. And then from that dreaming, from that chaotic dreaming.
Thank you for joining us and listening. If you enjoyed this content, we invite you to like and subscribe. If you're interested in energy intelligence technologies to calm yourself, regulate yourself, and start to use these technologies for your own benefit, you can follow the links below and engage.